Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So we broke down these clips in the last episode, and we went in depth. We broke down all the text, everything that we saw, and what we thought it could be related to. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Ambyes. I really like Death Stranding. I'm an artist. I taught English for 5 years, and I just really enjoy all the metaphors and just the fun stuff in it. So if you are a casual fan or a really obsessed fan, you are welcome here. The only thing we ask is that you're nice in the comments, and if you want to comment back and forth with everybody, feel free. Everybody here in this community is just really excited for the game and just happy to kind of break down the frames. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, keep watching. We are going to continue breaking down the reordered trailer posted to my channel, and without further ado, let's get into it.
You don't know a goddamn thing about Lou.
All right, Sam. Let's see what we can find on Lou.
Little digging. Now, according to them, BB-28 was flagged for disposal and subsequently incinerated 4 years ago, long before you and Lou first met.
We get our first look at his kind of bunker. I think this is going to be a distro room or like a private room. It's definitely not the Magellan. It doesn't have the same walls or anything. And this is also the room that we see Deadman on the videotape in. I'm fairly confident that Deadman will have his own episode again, or at least his own section of like relevant story. The fact that Deadman doesn't have a caw really I think opens up the storyline in a way that it wasn't before, because we know that if you're a haw without a caw, then a caw can maybe take over you, kind of like how Dollman took over the doll's body. So I do think that this area is probably where that takes place. So this is probably a distro center, just like how he would kind of visit us before. I don't recognize the city on the walls, but maybe it's a place that we'll get to see within this game. If you recognize it, let me know down below, but it doesn't really look familiar to me. We also have like a little side table, but it just has like a very small case on it, like a cargo case. And then there's something on the top shelf, but I can't make out what it is. Working from the top left to the bottom right, we have the table that we generally see in our private areas, where we would have maybe our cryptobytes and often like our hat or our energy drinks. I don't know if there's any brand deals right now, so I'm not sure if we'll get like Timefall Porter or like the beer, or if we'll get an energy drink, or if he has something else in mind for this game. We see a couple cargo boxes underneath the table, but they don't appear to have any details. We have new like black bedding and 2 pillows that he will probably never use because he's crazy and he just sleeps on like a bare mattress that I assume is plastic, but that's Sam, I guess. But the environmental storytelling is basically saying this is unbranded. There's no logos or anything on any of this stuff like there is in the bridges. We also still have the trash can, which makes me think we can still probably get some jump scares if you're looking at like Sam's feet or something. And then we have this like white chair footstool thing, which I'm wondering, that implies that we might have visitors. I don't remember there being a chair in his other private rooms, so it might be nice if we're able to, like, especially if there's co-op, which I'm hoping there'll be some version of being able to bring in a friend or 2-player mode, because we already know that there's gonna be some semblance of like partnering up, because they talk about like the co-ed shower or like the shared shower. So a lot of people have thought that either means we're gonna be able to maybe play the other characters or have them join us, or possibly we might have the option of people joining us. I really hope so, because in the last game we had a semblance of connection with other porters, but it would be really nice, even if it's just locally, to have like a 2-player. Typically Hideo has some sort of rhythm in his games, and we haven't really seen that yet with Death Stranding, other than a few mentions like how footsteps were the first music made by humans, things like that. And then with the addition of Higgs's guitar, and I've talked about the fact that the Higgs boson has like harmonic oscillators, and when you see those in action, they look like the electric bolts coming out of his guitar. And those electric bolts are often called like things like BB oscillators. So a lot of that wordplay is involved with the Higgs boson. And when I look at these musical graphics in the background of his private room, it reminds me not only of like the Higgs boson and how in string theory things oscillate and create like these waves, but it also reminds me, of course, of the waves on the beach. And then additionally, it reminds me of strands, so strings that connect or wrap together to form stronger bonds. So in the metaphorical way, I think that's probably what it's representing, but in another way, in like a less metaphorical, more literal way, I think this is probably going to be the new music player. We know that he can have like little music videos from Hideo's Instagram, but I think this will be like the new music player. Like if you wanted to have the music that you're downloading in the game or that you're receiving in the game played, I think this will be the private room's music player. Another thing I noticed about this private room is the fact that there is no shower or sink, but behind Sam, whenever he's first walking into the door, we see some like horizontal lights, and I actually think that that's going to be another door that can open, and behind that will be maybe like a training VR thing or the shower, something like that. I think this will be our new like wake up animation, kind of like how whenever he was in the private room at Bridges, he would wake up and like kind of, I don't know, like jolt awake. I think this is going to be kind of the new lay down mechanism. The reason I think this is because this is not the Magellan's bed. You can tell from the black fabric and the placement of the blanket up there underneath his elbow that this is definitely the bunker that we were just looking at. So the private room, whatever you want to call it, probably a distro. This is also the new shirt I think that he'll be wearing. Typically he wears some sort of sleeveless shirt whenever he's in those private rooms. I think this is kind of the new default. We have the drawbridge logo and what I think is the APAC logo. They're basically the new clothing maker. We seem to find their logos on all sorts of created items like the fanny packs and the blood bags. The next thing that we see is the inside of the Magellan, so we can assume that this is going to be his private room within the Magellan, and we can take a closer look at what we can see here. Now, the thing I will say is I'm of the mindset that Sam will not actually be in the Magellan private room very much. I think this is going to be a very quick cutscene, either right before or right after the game is kind of started. I think that we're going to get the information about BB's pod very quickly, very soon after the game starts. The only thing that makes me think I could be wrong about that is the fact that there are already items on the shelf, but I think the way they're going to explain that is that they're going to say something along the lines of like, oh, this is Tarman's old room, you can sleep here, or this is so-and-so's room, you can just stay in here. I personally don't think that these books actually have anything to do with Sam owning them, as we've seen that there's not been a lot of evidence that Sam is a huge reader of the old classics, and something like Moby Dick at this point would be very old. It would be like reading the Odyssey for Sam. Now, speaking of details, let's look at a few. We have basically a coffee cup in the background, and it has the Koji Pro logo on it, which, you know, this could just be an Easter egg of the Ludens man, but it might also imply that we still have the Ludens player or the Ludens prepper in the game, which would be fun. Maybe we can get some more items from him. The other thing that I went on a huge look around for were these books. So unfortunately, as a literature fan and as someone who reads a lot of classics, I was pretty bummed out to figure out that the books are actually made up by Hideo's creative artists, I suppose. These actual books, these covers don't exist anywhere. I went through 1,400 editions on Goodreads looking for the Voyage of the Beagle that had this particular look. And the reason I did that is because it looks so familiar. I was sure that this existed because it looked like a brand of classic literature that I had bought before. However, what they've done is a really clever play on Penguin Publishing House, and if you really do look closer at it, unlike me, who kind of just glanced and was like, oh, I'm gonna go find that edition, you'll notice that the little circular icon where the penguin would usually be is actually kind of like a whale motif almost. And near the bottom, where normally you would have like the publishing house name, there's actually some letters that match the UCA print on like Rainy's shirt. So these are literally covers or editions created by the developers, which is good in a way, but is not great for those of us who wanted to know what this other book was. Now, my initial thought was Treasure Island for some reason, just the look and the colors of it. But obviously, when you look at what letters you can see, Treasure Island wouldn't make up. It's got a short word and then a long word. Then I figured out that actually I think that is the author's name and that the title is technically on the golden band. And I didn't want to give up there, so I did keep looking, and I went through several lists of the 1800s, the books published there, because Moby Dick and the Voyage of the Beagle were both published between like 1830 and 1860. So I really did try to find lists related to both science and fiction that this book might be, but I never could find anything that fits. If this is indeed the title, then I think the title is The Something. Let's talk a little bit about Moby Dick, which is the book in the background. I've noticed that many people compare Tarman to the captain and basically assume because he has lost a limb that he will be the captain. There are others that also assume that since Sam is the main character, that this metaphor will relate to him directly. I am of two minds. I think it could be referencing Higgs or Sam. Higgs, in a way, is similar to the captain because he was seeking the sixth extinction, kind of like vengeance on humanity. He had a rough upbringing, he was in an abusive household, and this game might be him seeking vengeance because Amelie betrayed his trust. He did everything that this god asked him to do, and in the end, she betrayed him, took his powers, and he was abandoned on the beach. If Sam is going to be the one with the captain metaphor, then that can also make sense, but I think it will be resolved quickly because for Sam, the vengeance that he is seeking is against Higgs, who he believes has killed Lou. And therefore, Sam has lost a part of himself, and he is kind of like fulfilling that amputee metaphor. And then we have Higgs, I think in this scenario would be Ishmael, who he's the storyteller, and we've always learned the truth from Higgs. He always tells us the truth no matter what. But he is also a survivor of like a similar like trauma, and so I think in that way he would make a good Ishmael because he and Sam both in a way have suffered at the hands of this extinction entity. Sam has suffered because he's lost his wife, he lost his ability to die a true death, he's had to do all of these things, he's kind of been led astray by her and been lied to. And then of course you have Higgs, who literally has killed people for her and is betrayed. If Tarman ends up being the actual captain metaphor in this, as he is literally driving the ship, then I think that the revenge factor might come from the fact that he appears to have a young man with him in the trailer, and he looks like he has both his hands, so I think it's pre whatever happened to him. And I do wonder if there will be any storyline where he has lost a child and is looking for answers, because I think children are a big theme in this new video game. It seems like everyone has lost something or someone child-wise. Dollman appears to have lost a son. I think we'll find out Tarman has lost someone. Fragile has lost Lou. Sam lost not only Lou, but also his unborn child previously. Amelie and Bridget, they never could have kids because of the uterine cancer. And I think there will be a theme of that in this. The last part is that the book mentions the phantom pain. Now, we know in Metal Gear Solid, which I'm not going to make this about that, but that was literally the title of the game. But in our trailer for Death Stranding, Higgs says to Sam,
"If you want answers, you're gonna have to find them yourself. But the ones you do find, well, that pain you nurse will only get worse."
When we read this part in the novel, we actually get a really great reference to pain and how it is possible that there's someone else there linked that we just can't see. So he basically says, talking to the carpenter, he's like, how do you know that there isn't some entire living being right here standing in the same place as you? Which I do think is an interesting excerpt, because obviously we know, because of the Death Stranding, that there are symmetrical worlds, that we are seeing things existing in two places at once, and generally, while they don't overlap and bother each other, they are definitely beginning to collide with all of this overlap that's happening. Again, it confuses me on who is who, because the Captain Ahab is saying this to the carpenter, who's a very down-to-earth, good at his job guy who just does not really care and just wants to get the job done. And that really mirrors Higgs telling Sam, you're going to have to figure this pain out and deal with it. So I'm not sure. There's just a lot of metaphors, and hopefully it won't be too heavy-handed, and it'll just be a fun little note back to Metal Gear Solid, kind of like how this guy with the bandana is. Before I finish this kind of rant on Metal Gear Solid, I also want to mention most people compare Sam to Big Boss, but I would actually argue that Higgs is more like Big Boss in general than Sam is. Higgs is trained by two maternal figures who basically turn him into a weapon. You have Coffin, who raises him and then, teaches him how to fight and how to be like a better warrior. And then you have Amelie, who basically uses him to like destroy things. And he also has this mysterious past. And it's interesting that Sam is compared to Big Boss so often, and maybe it's because Sam is such a stoic character and Big Boss can kind of come off that way. I've watched a lot of the game footage at this point, so I am slowly learning Metal Gear Solid, but I don't know all the ins and outs. So let me know if you think these comparisons are off or not. But after learning a lot about Mama and, is it Mama? The original Big Boss, and then Big Boss and the snakes and all of this, it feels like Higgs is that original snake guy. Gosh, I'm gonna digress because I actually don't know enough about Metal Gear Solid to get into it, but I kind of feel like Higgs is the one that feels more like a snake or a Big Boss than Sam does. One last look at the pod that we saw in that clip. There's really nothing happening but some bubbles, so I wanted to make sure that we got a close look at this just to see if there was anything that might surprise us, but I don't see anything. I am a little curious about the umbilical cord that I see on the inside, because I would assume that to have an umbilical cord that you would need a fetus attached. So I'm kind of curious why there's an umbilical cord but no baby. Maybe they figured out a different way to utilize these things. We also get the shower scene where Sam appears to be having an emotional breakdown. And we will assume that this is probably after he receives some sort of news about Lou. But as you can see, there is no pod. There's nothing in the shower with him. I did look at the different signage and found that the words on the shower are cave water only, or cave water system. So I thought that was interesting that they're using cave water. I don't really know what the real world like environmental storytelling of that would be, other than maybe the water isn't safe to use in the world of Death Stranding right now, which would make sense with the timefall and everything. But the science that they used in the original game was once timefall touched something, it was safe to drink. So technically, if you had your gloves on and you held out your canteen, as soon as it touched the canteen's sides or solid matter, the timefall properties stopped and it became regular water. So it's possible that we're just looking at, they don't have any sort of like well or pipes or anything that they can pull from, so they're using a cave water filtration system. Or maybe this is giving us some environmental clues about the fact that the water supply is poisoned. If we have the beach overlapping with the real world and all this chiral matter and contamination, then it's very plausible that the drinking water could easily be contaminated. If you're not like me and watching the trailers 500 times, you might not have noticed that the water going down the shower there is actually the same thing that happens when we see Lou in her crib. Two things are happening. I think either these are completely unconnected and this just proves that when we're looking at Lou at this point, we're viewing her through a window or a shower thing, or, and this is way more heartbreaking, this might be what Sam's imagining while he's in that shower, and that's why we're seeing water on both things. Hopefully that's not, it's a bit of a reach, but it's the only two times in the trailer that I see those similar watermarks happening. When I first watched this, I thought that was a pod, so if you thought that too, just know that that is his kneecap, not a pod. Hideo is a master of transition, and we see Sam lifting his arms, I assume to touch his own head, like to hold his head because he's crying. But we go to the next clip, which is Deadman, and Sam is like reaching out to that private room, full wall TV, like as if he can touch him. The first thing I want to point out is his cufflink. So we can assume that he's probably still with Bridges, but then I also want to challenge that thought. We know that the APAC guy from the F2 distro that we talked about in the last video also has cufflinks, and he's not associated with Bridges that we know of. So it's very possible that that technology was kind of shipped out beyond Mama and Lochna. Perhaps it was kind of like how we have open software here. Maybe they just kind of put it out there and let people utilize it. So it's very possible that he is not anywhere near Bridges and is still utilizing a cufflink. The other thing is we can obviously tell he's on the beach. He seems to have his arms out, almost maybe in amazement. And then we can tell that he's on the beach, and there appear to be maybe wells back there, but we can't be totally sure. The reason I point that out is previously we believed that Deadman could not visit the beach or the sand because he didn't have a car. Now we know that he was able to visit the beach and save Sam because he used Lou's car and kind of hitched a ride basically, and that was one of the ways that Sam was saved. Deadman, Mama, Lochna, Hartman, and Lou all connected with Fragile in order to save Sam from the seam and pull him back. So Amelie says, look, you're still connected. Without too much theory crafting, I just want to bring up that in Death Stranding 1, we see the end of the game in the beginning. When Sam wakes up on the beach with the baby and stands up and he sees the 5 bodies in the sky, that is the end of the game. We can kind of assume, and you're free to disagree on this, but my interpretation is that that was a Doom's nightmare of the future, and that he's seeing those 5 people, and that's what saves him, because he actually, in that vision, has his cufflinks on already, and he hasn't even met Bridges yet. So a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the trailer, I'm skeptical of, solely because we could be seeing the end of the game at the beginning and not even know it. And I almost forgot, so I have this big color theory idea. Basically, Higgs's BB is red, Sam's BB is yellow, and Drawbridge is pretty much completely blue. Even the outfits have the blue neon lighting. And chromatic aberration is when three levels of color are separated. When they're together, you have a complete image. You have what everything should look like normally. But chromatic aberration is when the three layers become separate and you get three different colors. And of course, we have the regular world, the beach, and the scene. So Hideo transitions us from Sam moving his hands to grab his head in sadness or agony to this scene of him touching the screen of Deadman. But the thing is, we only get this very short clip of him, this frame, but his lips actually move upwards into almost like a pseudo smile. He could be just a weird crier, but it appears that he's happy, so I don't think that we have to fear Deadman's death, although Hideo better not. I'll be very upset with him if he kills Mr. Deadman. But like I said, or maybe I've said, I think I've mentioned this in past videos, I have a really big fear for Deadman because he does not have a caw. And so if he is on the beach and he is now capable of getting there without help, then that means that he has a caw. So either he has developed one, been given one, or my fear is that he has been taken over by someone else's caw, and that something bad has happened. However, I also know that he is good friends with Hartman, and Hartman is traversing the beach and appears to be mapping it. So hopefully what's actually happening is that they have found a way to get Deadman to that part of the beach. I hope it's not a bad thing. But those sure do look like tears, so let's all hope they're happy tears. Otherwise, it's going to be very upsetting to the fans of Deadman if he's already dead when the game begins. That would be truly tragic because he was such a fan favorite. And we hear his voice when he is telling Sam about Lou and her pod and how she was supposed to be decommissioned, but that didn't happen. So I think there's a high chance that he's fine, but I'm still worried for him.
You're wrong. Death can tear us apart. We'll always be connected. We will always be with you, no matter what. You will never, ever be alone.
So this was hard to place in the timeline. We assumed that they already have a relationship because she's there babysitting Lou, but I went ahead and put it further away because she has on the yellow jacket and so does Sam. The reason I find this confusing for the timeline is that Sam wears two different jackets. He wears a yellow jacket that has the Drawbridge logo, and he wears a black jacket with the Drawbridge logo. The black jacket we see more often in his scenes where he is speaking on the Magellan with the other crew members. However, Fragile has second hands on, so I feel like that means that this is after her attack. My other theory or reasoning for this is that the background seems to be Magellan-like. It's very dark. It's kind of got like a metallic-y sheen to it. They're also crying, so I think that there's a high amount of chiralium, like the tar lake has appeared. But her outfit is not the same as what she typically wears. She doesn't appear to have her zip up like captain's outfit that she normally wears when she says like I'm the commander. She doesn't have her hat on, which of course I have stated in the other videos. She only seems to wear that hat literally on the ship, so I don't know. Here's a couple things that I noticed that kind of relate back to the outfit discussions we've been having. I know a lot of us have been worried that second hands is attached to her spine or that she might be paralyzed, something like that. Here we can see that they are clipped to something and they're over her jacket and they don't have the like neck piece that we generally see. There's a blue piece on her normal commander outfit. That appears to be kind of how it's connected to her neck. Of course, there's always the chance that she's wearing a skeleton or it's connected to her vertebrae somehow. In the background, I'm just trying to show you an example of that weird sheen that we're seeing, and I think that's the same. What it appears like when we're on the beach, we have that weird sheen on the ship. However, we're not in gray or any monochrome colors, so it may just be the reflection of water. And with that, we are done with another section of the video. It's crazy because we don't get as far as I would like in the trailer, and we talk so much, but I'm glad that you guys are enjoying what I'm putting out and aren't bothered by the podcast style that we're doing or all of the details that I like to drop in lore wise. Next week, we're going to show you a little preview. You're actually watching that on screen. I'm hoping to kind of get through some of the landscapes, and I think, gosh, we're halfway. So if you've been kind of following along in the trailer that I reordered, it is 26 minutes long, and we are at 13 minutes in, and we have broken down almost every frame along the way. So I will see you on Thursday, and have a great week.